Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. 47 minutes after the hour. Hope you guys are good on this yucky day. Wave meteorologist Brian Good doing a midday version today. It's been a busy day here at the station, so make sure at least touch base with what's going on now and what we're facing as we head into the next couple of days. I mean, it's pretty obvious we're in a warm pattern, right? But we do have at least a cooler setup at times in that 10-day that we'll at least get a couple of items on the snowboard. We'll talk about that here in just a second. So yes, Brian, I just showed your comment a second ago. You're right. It's nice to get updates on things, even though the snowboard can be a little sad at times. But hey, snow lovers, we just went through a week of Arctic air and at least some snow on the ground. No, it wasn't like a foot of snow, but still it was a decent blast of winter. You got to admit that. All right, so where do we stand? Well, let me get through the snowboard, and then I got to backtrack and get into the next 48 hours because there will be some impacts to the weather coming our way. I debated on doing a yucky talk instead of even rain talk or even storm talk, because snow talk really doesn't seem to fit the bill on the pattern here, but you get the idea. All right, let's look at the snowboard, and we'll start there. And we'll begin with the item for Saturday, still there for Saturday night. It comes with a lot of asterisks. I cannot say that. You know what I mean. Comes with a fine print. There you go. As we into Saturday night into Sunday. Then we into next week. Watching the flow. It's a very sharp dive in the flow in the jet next week. So we'll see what happens with anything that can try to dive out of that flow. I'll be generous because I feel generous today. I'll be generous and add a flurry chance in for part of next week. But it too has some fine print. All right. This is a live look at the Ohio River in New Albany. You can't tell, but downtown Louisville, normally we can see it, is right there. So we usually see the bridges in the distance as well. So the fog bank really expanding over the waters there of the Ohio. It's been an interesting setup because we've had this cold ground and warm air has been flowing in, melted the snowpack, but it's led to a very humid setup, perfect setup for fog to develop. And that will be the case over the next 18 hours, especially. Then we get into Friday, and it's kind of the opposite. We end up with a warmer ground thanks to the warm air that's moving in. The ground warms up, And then we get colder air that's moving in on Friday. That too induces a fog setup. So fog is one of the bigger weather items we'll be facing over the next couple of days. More on that in just a second. Let's get you outside. At least it's mild. There's a plus. I just wish it was sunny. I get it. If we're going to be warm, might as well have sun. Warm and rain kind of steams for snow lovers, right? 61 in Somerset. Hello, Pulaski County. You guys are showing off. 54 here in Louisville. I think we have a good chance to get it to about 58 to 61, somewhere in that range this afternoon. Visibility at the airport is not as bad as what it was earlier. We don't have as much of the rain at the moment that pulls the clouds down. We'll see that kind of bounce around a bit. It's roughly about 5 miles. 10, by the way, is considered near perfect. We're only looking at a couple stations at that level. Most are not. All right, we've already picked up 1 1/4 on rainfall in Louisville in the past 24 hours, more about, I'd say, 1.5 inches across central areas of Kentucky. So good soaking rain, especially in the central part of the state. Lighter rain across Indiana. When it comes to flooding, we still are going to have more rounds of rain that tonight we'll have to deal with, and times on Thursday as well. Not so much on Friday, but really the next 24 hours we'll have more rounds of rain coming into play that should push several sites at or even just above 2 inches. Now, most of the area rivers in central Kentucky, just the way we have with our karst environment in Kentucky, have a good chance to at least have some minor flooding that will show up. When it comes to the Ohio, it's really going to be about what happens upstream. There's a lot of warm air melting the snow upstream in the Ohio all the way up to the Three Rivers area as you get into Pennsylvania. So that does allow for the rise in the Ohio, and then a lot more of the water pools from Indiana downstream toward Evansville. So the Ohio River toward Evansville is expected to get higher than what it will be here in Louisville, but still we could get awful close to action stage. It's something we have not really talked much about in a long time. It's been such a long, dry period. So we'll be keeping an eye on the gauges, but right now everything looks to be either at action or minor flooding. We don't see anything excessive at the moment because we were so far in the deficit side of things. But this is common. This is how you get flooding in January. Not to the extreme of 1937 that we had when the record flood hit Louisville, especially. It was after an Arctic blast had happened. The ground was still frozen. We had a tremendous amount of rain, and you ended up flooding the whole city. That's still the big flood. That's the benchmark, right? Well, it's the same scenario as how you get flooding in January. Even in today's age, you have Arctic air that freezes the ground, and you warm rapidly. And it's the same thing that's happening here for this year, just not to that extreme, thank goodness. The rain continues to backbuild all the way down into Mississippi and to Louisiana. Look at that flow. It's not moving very far to the east. These thunderstorms here across portions of Mississippi will pull and tug on the line into Alabama as we did this afternoon, but we're getting the blow off from the tops of those thunderstorms, feeding the rain all the way into Kentucky, and that's going to be our rain really for the rest of the day into parts of Thursday. Your severe risk, just FYI, is going to stay to our south today, and I think if anything, they probably need to extend it just a little bit more into Alabama, the new update. We'll see. Tomorrow's outlook, I don't think is out yet. Actually, it did change slightly. They did move it up a little more into eastern Tennessee. There is a warm sector. Another low pressure is going to form here into Dallas and move rapidly over Jackson, Tennessee, and then very close to Louisville near this time or a little bit later tomorrow. It's going to allow for a very narrow warm sector to push right into Tennessee and Kentucky. At the same time, the storm is getting pushed east. So we're thinking if there's going to be any lightning and thunder, it will likely be limited toward the I-75 corridors of Kentucky and Tennessee. And any severe risk is very, very low. We're going to be quite foggy through the day. It's tough to flip the atmosphere over to get into a stormy one when you have all-day fog like that. I've seen it happen before, but it's rare. So at the moment, I like what they've done is nudge it up a little more into Tennessee. That makes sense, but I can see why it would extend all the way into Kentucky. Just don't be surprised if you hear a rumble of thunder, as I'll show you here in a second. With anything that forms tomorrow afternoon, that is certainly possible. Otherwise, our main concern really for a lot of us is going to be the fog. Look at all the fog advisories out. You can tell where the snowpack and the frozen ground really rolled, right? And to the Great Lakes, much of the Midwest, into the plains. Got a feeling we're going to see these fog advisories extend much more to the east as early as this afternoon, as visibility could easily get below a mile with this type of setup. Be careful traveling tonight, especially away from interstates and freeways that have the lighting along them. You'll get away from the city, and don't put your headlights, of course, on high beam. Just use some caution, pay extra attention traveling around town, okay? So foggy and at times soupy, if you will, as we head into later on this afternoon and tonight. The fog will continue to worsen. Tomorrow morning's commute, not as much of a heavy rain scenario tomorrow morning, but it does look very foggy tomorrow, drizzly, roads will be kind of sloppy, so the wipers will be ongoing, a lot of spray on your windshield. Yeah, just one of those days on Thursday. But again, not a lot on temperature change. But here comes that warm sector pushing right into Tennessee, right into Kentucky. And look at the numbers on temperature. Low to mid 60s. Dew point's not far from this. Given the idea we're at fog, your dew point's going to be very close to the actual temperature. Yet dew points at 60 or higher in January does get your attention and can allow for not only heavy rain in some cases, but it can certainly allow for thunderstorms to form. But as I mentioned, the track is key on this. A lot of the modeling takes it very close to Louisville, which I think would keep most of the thunderstorm potential alone toward I-75. But if you live near Nelson County, Greene, Taylor, Marion, Washington, just be aware there could be a few thunderstorms that would pop late in the afternoon. If the low ends up tracking a little further west, but there are a couple of models that want to do that, then we would have to move the thunderstorm chance a little closer to I-65. We just don't know that for sure until we get a little closer. Either way, very quiet much of the day, which is fog and rain, and then suddenly late in the afternoon, we jump up into the 60s. We get a chance for rain and thunder. And the wind will then ramp up as the low pressure moves by. The wind could get between 20 and 30 miles per hour. That'll steer things up, wipes out the fog scenario, right? You end up with a colder wind, too, that will develop Thursday night, and then it allows the fog to redevelop and maybe a foggy setup for much of the day on Friday. So you see the wind very light throughout much of the day, and then suddenly as the front moves in, that low pressure moves by Thursday night, the wind surges up. Could stay 60 or so, though, all the way until the wind direction changes. So relatively mild evening. Boy, it's going to give our furnaces a nice break. That is good because we're all dreading the bill, right, for next month, what happened this past week. And then we get into the weekend. So this low pressure moves on by. Let me show you. Zip on by. There we go. Now, the weekend, again, there's not an Arctic air mass that is in place. Oh, hold on one second. Got a spammer. Hold on. Get rid of the spammer. Bye-bye. See you later. All right. Aaron, what's wrong, Aaron? Aaron, yawn, boring weather. Aw. Everyone cheer up Aaron right now. Put a smiley face. Put a smiley face and a snowflake next to Aaron because he loves snow, and that'll cheer Aaron up. I promise it will. All right. We don't have a lot of Arctic air at play as we head into this weekend. So that's important to note. So we're back to the old standpoint before we got into the Arctic air mass in January of if any system is going to produce snow, it's going to have to do it itself. It's got to work hard to provide for snowfall. Rainfall rate can do that, dynamic cooling. However, it's also got to be at night. A daytime passage of the system, it's very difficult to do because the sun angle is low. Yes, the angle is getting higher now. All right, we're past the midpoint of winter, so now we're getting into a higher sun angle from here on out. So the storm systems have to work harder. So as it moves on by, the track has still got to be worked out because it's still varying whether or not it's going to track near Louisville or to the south and east of Louisville. Aaron's loving that. There you go, Aaron. All right, I'm glad you're happy. All right, so as the low moves by on Saturday night and Sunday, there's what we call the deformation zone. It's the little tail, the northwest side of a low pressure. That is where your upper low is located. That's your best chance to get dynamic cooling. It can take the cold air up above and pull it down to the ground. But it's got to rain hard enough to grab a hold of that colder air and actually drag it down to where the snowflakes can stay intact. Otherwise, they will melt as they fall. If the rain is too light, or if the track is a little too far north, then your thumping of snow, as we like to call that, will be north of us. It's very narrow. It's not, but given the idea that it is a narrow band, there's not a lot of wiggle room to work with on this. So I don't know yet. Confidence is very low on this one. We just got to get a little closer. It's the only way to answer that question. We just got to figure out if it's going to pass over us. But here's a very important thing to keep in mind here. This is a system that, yes, can produce a thumping of snow, but the ground temps have warmed up at this point for sure. I don't think we're going to even get the air temperature down to freezing, so we'll likely stay down to 34, 35. You can still accumulate. It'll still stick to the grass, cars, rooftops, but it's not going to last very long, and it's going to melt rapidly after it's done. So unless you're awake to see this happen, you're going to miss it. And again, it's not a guarantee it's even going to happen here because the low is too far north. This is a fun show for Dayton, Ohio, not for us. So we'll watch it. But as far as snow lovers go, this is about your only shot right now that I think is interesting for the weekend. Otherwise, this will have another round of a soaking rain with it as it moves on by for Saturday and Sunday. Not the best of weekends. Now we get into the very sharp angle of the jet where everything just dives straight in from the north, heading to the south. This is the part we got to figure out. Will there be any system that can provide almost like a backdoor cold front and move in to allow for a clipper at a very sharp angle that could perhaps skim our eastern side here with maybe a rain, snow chance or flurry chance? It's tough. It really just depends on the angle of attack. And this is a very wild looking setup as we get closer to Groundhog Day in early February. We're going to see a very strong ridge here into the nation's heartland, but still the eastern part of the United States wants to fight back and allowing for these dips. There's going to be a battle that is going to eventually develop here on how this will evolve into February. February has the look of a very active month, and I'm not just talking snow. I think it's going to be a very active month in general. So a lot to watch there. We want to get a dry stretch for a while, the first to mid part of next week, and then once we get past Groundhog Day, I think it'll get active. The polar vortex is not here. It's on the other side of the globe. In fact, the jet right now across around Hawaii all the way into California is very, very strong. Goes all the way west to Hawaii, actually, and that is going to allow for a warm punch of air right into the lower 48, and several low pressures. They'll also move into the lower 48. You can see that punch right into there, feeding that wind blasting across the country. Confidence on that is high on this scenario of the warm air and the active jet. Confidence is still iffy, though, on how much the jet can dive on the eastern side. Again, we saw this before the January attack, so we'll see if we see another sharp dip that can happen. Otherwise, if it's too far to the east, which it may be, then we'll be into the warm zone on this. Everyone's already asking, when will we get back to another polar vortex drop in cold air? We don't see any strong signal on that yet. However, these patterns do like to repeat, so it's likely to happen again. But you got to keep in mind when you get another Arctic attack like this, they tend to not be as intense as they were in January like we had. So I do think we'll cool down. I do think we have more snow chances ahead. I really do. I just don't see anything as brutal on the cold side, which is fine with me. That cold air Arctic attack is a bit much, right? You can't really even enjoy the snow. You got wind chills that are going 15 below zero. So a lot of fun and games to have, certainly in tracking. But as far as anything bitterly cold, Arctic blast, anything like that, I do not see that for a while. Warmer than average is likely going to be the key as we head into at least the first couple of weeks there of February. And let's hope we don't get into a severe weather scenario. I don't like the look the jet's trying to take, but that's something we're going to have to watch, and certainly have to watch the rivers. We do this often here at Wave Country. We go from one storyline of flooding to drought, and then we go back to flooding again. So it won't surprise me that may become more of an issue into the spring. So we'll see. Let's see. What did you say, Angela? I'd like to have some snow to fall during the daytime hours. I agree. Daytime snow is great. It's a little tougher. It can happen. Travis, Euro is trending colder after February 7th. Yep. You got to keep in mind, anytime the models show anything diving and going colder, add about a week. Add about a week to it. Of the quiet of the rain. Yeah, that's the thing. It's very peaceful outside. Again, we're saving some money on our furnace right now, electric bills. We don't have ice to deal with. It's good napping weather. There's a lot of pluses here. Again, mild rain. We need the rain because of a drought. Just be careful traveling because the roads were a mess this morning. There's a lot of flooding and hydroplaning issues due to drainage. So that's still going to be an issue for the afternoon commute and certainly as we get into tomorrow. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it at that for now. It's a kind of a brief but quick update today. But at least wanted you guys to be aware of where we stand on the rain and fog here in the next 24 hours. And we'll just, we'll keep an eye on that weekend system and see how it plays out. All right. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, Aaron. Hope I bored you enough you can take a nap now. There you go. Jeremy, real quick, how does February look for precipitation? I think it'll start off dry but ramp up to near or above normal. So something we'll be watching as February evolves. Have a good rest of the day, guys. Go take a nap. Rest up.